One. Ooh, almost like that. I feel like a pastor here. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. I think we can start our concert. First of all, thank you very much for coming, and this is our very first concert since the beginning of the pandemic. And, I need to introduce myself, probably. My name is Alexey Yevtikhovich. I'm a president and artistic director of the Collegium Musicum, and it's happened to be, I'm a violinist as well. So today, we having our very first program in the Collegium Musicum concert series for 2021. And I have to say that, say big thank you, because this program was supported by the grant funding that has been provided by the Middlesex County Board of County Commissioners through a grant award from the Middlesex County Cultural and Arts Trust Fund. The program funded by Middlesex County, which is the partner of New Jersey State Council of the Arts. So we have a big thank you for them, first of all, for letting us do that. And the Collegium Musicum concert series will have, this year, we'll have a multiple presentation dedicated to music of Johann Sebastian Bach and the Bach family, and how we dedicate our programs, and we will talk about Johann Sebastian Bach and how his music brought the influence to all other composers, all the way to today's composers, to the music which was literally written just yesterday. Still, there's a lot of influence by Bach. One more thing, I would like to thank this wonderful church, St. Thomas the Apostle, Roman Catholic Church, and our concert series happened to be in the moment of the celebration of the 100 years anniversary of this wonderful church. So, Justin, will you say a few words? Let me introduce the music director of St. Thomas Church, Justin Connors here.
Good evening and welcome. We're so delighted that you are here. Just, you know, our restrooms are in the front of the church if anybody needs anything, but we warmly welcome Alex, Phyllis, and Shay here tonight for a wonderful program. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, thank you, Justin. Before we will start our program, I hope everybody got our printed programs here, so you can follow our pieces. And allow me to say just a few words about Johann Sebastian Bach. Everybody knows this name. That's probably the most popular composer in the world. About 10 years ago, when you will ask literally on the street, name one classical composer, everybody would say probably Ludwig van Beethoven. But these days, everybody will start from Bach. However, Bach, it's happened, and at the times of the Mozart, at the end of the 18th century, he was either completely forgotten, or he was known as the father of the famous Bach. And this famous Bach were his very talented and great composers, his sons. His music, Johann Sebastian Bach music, was completely forgotten. Later in the 19th century, it was rediscovered again, and even today we're finding some pieces which are rediscovered every day. Several years ago, I know there was one of the area was found in Germany, literally in the shoebox, and that was identified as a manuscript of Johann Sebastian Bach. And guess what? It was named shoebox area. And about 10 years ago, there was another box of the documents of the archives found in Kiev, Ukraine. So that's the box with the archive happened to move from Germany after the Second World War, and it was rediscovered in Kiev. So Bach works still could be found, and there's still something new. I don't want to give you a whole lecture about the Bach right now, but just a few words. Johann Sebastian Bach was very well known for a few tricks and a few secrets which he put into his music. And he was very well known, his addiction to numbers, his usage of numerology and gematria. And if name of Bach, his last name would be translated to the numbers based on the alphabet. A would be 1, B is a 2, and so on. So his name, B-A-C-H, would be 2 plus 1 plus 3 plus 8. That would be number 14. So Bach, known to put his most important pieces and most significant points he was making, playing around the numbers, number 14, or reversing this number, number 41, or any combination of this. And that this way he put a lot of codes behind his music. And for today's concert, we didn't do it on purpose. But it happened that we are starting our program from the Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1, the Prelude and Fugue, number 14, in F-sharp minor. Allow me to introduce our wonderful pianist, our wonderful performer here, Phyllis Alper-Letter, my great friend, and please give a big applause. So we will start from the Well-Tempered Clavier. Thank you. All right, let me introduce our next performer here, Shay Velosa, fantastic organist, good friend of mine for several years already. We've been performing together multiple times. And when we will talk about Johann Sebastian Bach, it's impossible to talk about him without music for organ. Bach was known, and he is probably the best organist in the world. Probably the most prolific composer who composed for organ specifically, or other pieces including the organ. So let's give a good applause to Shay Velosa, and we'll listen some organ. Shay, please.
It's very nice to be here this evening and to see all of you here, and I'm happy to be playing for the Collegium Musicum and here at St. Thomas Church. You might see a few things in the coming section that I'll be playing that seem very strange to be on a Bach concert, since they were not written by Johann Sebastian Bach. But one of the things that I wanted to do here that Alex and I talked about was to sort of show the evolution of Bach's works and the influence that it's had thereafter his death. And so the piece I'll start out with is by a composer named Dietrich Buxtehude, who was a German composer who lived during Bach's lifetime, but also earlier. And he was one of Bach's biggest inspirations. And there's the famous story that many of you have probably heard, where Bach traveled many, many miles, somewhere around 200, to see Dietrich Buxtehude and be a part of this music festival that he was doing. And so he walked the 200 miles and told his church that he'd take a few weeks off, and he showed up again a few months later and just kind of really dismissive as to the fact that he was gone for months and months. But he went to see Buxtehude, and Bach was sort of the founder and creator and of the idea of a prelude in fugue, but it came from a musical form called a preludium, in which you have a large number of short sections that'll vary between improvised sounding, very free, rhythmically written sections, and then short metered fugues, subjects that develop. And so it goes back and forth between those in the preludium. And I'll start out with the preludium in C major by Dietrich Buxtehude. And you can't really see what my feet are doing here in our configuration for tonight, but it starts out with a solo for the pedals, which I'll play with my feet. And it just is written, it starts out with the pedals, but a common practice in these pieces would be to do a short kind of improvised flourish to sort of get people's attention, as if you were giving a speech and you went like that. So I'll improvise a very short little introduction and then start out with the pedal solo. So I hope you enjoy the Preludium in C major by Dietrich Buxtehude. The next piece that I've chosen is a piece that I'm sure most of you have probably heard at one time or another, and people seem for some reason to associate it with Dracula or Halloween, though it has nothing to do with either one. It's Bach's very famous Toccata and Fugue in D minor, which is probably not only his most famous work, but one of the most famous works for organ in all of history. And I've chosen this piece because it's generally thought of as one of Bach's earlier works for organ, and it really shows well the transition from the preludium to the prelude and fugue. And so the toccata, in this case, takes the place of a prelude, and there are lots of short little sections that go back and forth, like you just heard, between metered and improvised sounds, and the registration or sounds that I use on the organ change back and forth between those sections. But then, instead of a short little fugue, there's a very long one where you'll hear a subject or a theme, and he'll develop that again and again throughout the entire fugue. So I hope you enjoy the Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and that you'll notice some of the similarities, but also the differences between this and the style of the Preludium. Thank you. So the next piece I'm going to play for you is by another German composer of the Romantic going into the modern 20th century era, Siegfried Karg-Ehlert. And I think of his era, he was probably the most versatile of all composers because he composed in the style of Debussy and that of Bach and Handel, and every single piece is convincing, and you'd think it was probably written by the composer after whom it is named. So this next piece I'll play for you is a very short little piece, and it features flute stops on the organ. One is called an open flute, where the pipe is, it's like those. It goes all the way up to the top, and then it's open. And then another sound you'll hear is a stopped flute, and the pipe has a tap on the top of the chimney, and it has a much brighter and more incisive sound to the attack. And you'll hear these two flutes sort of talking back and forth to each other in this aria, a la Bach. So it's an aria in the style of Johann Sebastian Bach. So this is an example of how his music influenced other composers who came after him. So I hope you enjoy this charming little piece, Aria a la Bach by Karg-Ehlert. Thank you. The final piece that I'll play by myself here is also written by Bach, and this shows how that the idea of the chorale or the hymn influenced Bach's music, especially for the organ. So he wrote a number of different series of pieces based on the chorales or the hymns of the German Lutheran Church. And the hymns in the Lutheran Church are central to the worship and the liturgy. And so what he did, there was a collection that he wrote, though this piece is not from that collection, called The Little Organ Book, in which he took all these chorales and he wrote preludes based on the chorale tunes. And a lot of the times his students would take these and they would use them in their church jobs as they were embarking on church music careers. And so the one that I'll play for you today is translated roughly as Lord Jesus, we are here. And what I'll do for you, I'll play for you the chorale. So I'll just play a verse as it would be played if you were singing along to it. And then I'll play the prelude that Bach wrote based on that piece. And you'll hear a couple of different sounds again. You'll hear very soft sounds called a Gemshorn, which is imitative of an actual instrument that was made out of a ram's horn. And the horn was hollowed out and then had holes bored into it, and then it was played kind of like a recorder. And so the Gemshorn is an imitative stop that sounds sort of like that instrument. And that'll be the accompaniment. And then you'll hear two different voices playing the solo melody. One recites it one time, and then it repeats, and you'll hear it on another voice, and then the conclusion of it. So I'll play the hymn once, and then I'll play Bach's prelude, Lord Jesus, we are here.
So let us continue, and now I guess that's my time to join Shay, and we will perform right now the piece, which is normally known as the piece for violin solo. That's the preludium from the Partita number 3 in E major. Also, Bach, he was known for reusing his music in the other different pieces. And this particular preludium, it's known to be the Sinfonia, which is the starting piece of one of his cantata, number 29. So it's a very well-known piece and one of the church cantatas. Also, he was using it in other pieces. So right now, we're going to play the preludium with, done in arrangements in 19th century by a German violinist and organist, Wilhelmi. So he created accompaniment for organ while the violin play his normal part. Okay. Thank you, Shay. And now we're going to go for the next part of our program. And another instrument will be introduced. And that's the instrument which Bach was known to writing a lot of music for it. The Well-Tempered Clavier, both books was composed probably to play on this instrument, the harpsichord. And today, actually, that's the debut concert for this particular instrument here. This harpsichord was made in 1974 by New Jerseyan harpsichord maker, Mr. Christopher Bannister. Christopher Bannister was a New Jerseyan maker who lived in Princeton, New Jersey, or actually in Hopewell, New Jersey, and he produced over 100 of different models of the harpsichord. So his instruments, they were purchased or acquired or ordered by many very well-known orchestras and organizations, including Philadelphia Symphony and the Chamber Orchestra, by many Baroque groups. And I believe there is the instruments by Christopher Bannister in the Westminster Conservatory, and he had a few instruments ordered by Rutgers University. So this particular instrument was made on order by one of the Baroque group in New York City in 1974. And then it kind of disappeared, and 1 year ago, I found it on the advertisement on the Facebook. I found this instrument in Massachusetts. I called the gentleman and asked him about the status of this instrument. It needed some work to be restored and brought back to playable condition. So with the help of my very good friend, Mr. Paul Dorsey, we acquired this instrument for Collegium Musicum, and we did the restoration work. We changed the strings, we ordered some parts for it, and that was an easy job to do because the parts simply not available. So we found a company in Australia which reproduced some of the very, very small parts for this instrument. They reproduced it in a 3D printer, sent us the replacement parts, and we've been able to actually restore it and bring it back to life. So that's the story of this instrument, and now I would like to ask Phyllis to join me. We will perform one of the best work written by Johann Sebastian Bach for violin and a harpsichord. And his cycle of the sonatas for harpsichord and the violin, which are all written in the forms of trio sonatas. This particular sonata in C minor is probably the best example of and the top version of the genre of trio sonatas. Trio sonatas, meaning there are a lot of trio sonatas, and a lot of composers were written trio sonatas for 3 instruments or even for single instruments. Bach, he got trio sonatas written for organ. But that means that in that piece of music, there are 3 voices which are about equally even and important in the music. And in that music, you will hear, in the piece which we will perform, you will hear how 2 instruments and the 3 voices created for two instruments, how they communicate between each other, how they interact, how they go in a harmony, in agreement, and at the same time in disagreement. And that's the beauty of the music by Bach. So let us perform Sonata number 4 in C minor for harpsichord and the violin. Now, the last piece in our program is a very, very special piece of music. It's very special for, it was very special for Bach. It's very special for every performer, for every violinist. It's very special for all the researchers and scholars who are learning and looking deeper into what Bach did for music. The chaconne from the Partita number 2, probably one of the most difficult pieces ever written for the violin. Simple melody or simple bass line and a 63 variation, but yet one of the most complex piece of music ever written. Many interpretations of that piece exist, many transcription for the piano, or even for the entire orchestra, or symphony orchestra. And still, that's one of the most touching pieces of music ever played on the violin. I personally tried this piece of music a long time ago when I was probably 14 or 15 years old. And since that time, I perform it more or less regularly. And I can tell every time I'm returning to chaconne, every time I'm playing this piece of music, it's new to me. That's the new book. And I call it, it's not the book, it's not the story, it's a journey. This is the journey which I'm going through with the music by Johann Sebastian Bach. This is the journey which I'm inviting you to join me and spend next 16, 17 minutes finding and living through the piece of music. There are many stories or many legends about chaconne, and one of them saying that this piece of music was written as a memoriam to his wife who passed away in 1720, leaving the young Bach at that time with the 5 young children. So the manuscript was dated as 1720, the year when the first wife of Bach passed away. And now I want to say and finish our concert in a sad story, but let's look at this piece of music and listen to it and go through it as the hope, our hope, going to the next chapter in our lives. We all lost some friends and relatives in the past COVID, so I did. And so with this piece of music, we can reflect and we can remember them, and still let's look in the future. So, Johann Sebastian Bach, chaconne.